Around the world, they're being placed, girls stripped of memory, trained to serve, programmed to smile. To outsiders, it looks like opportunity, but behind the mirrors, it's something else, something global. And at the center of it all is Oprah. Known not as a celebrity, but as mother. She doesn't steal your body. She steals your purpose. I was sent to inspect one of her schools. I thought I was auditing them. I didn't realize I was being reactivated. I don't remember boarding the plane. One moment I was in Johannesburg going over inspection protocols. The next I was staring out the window of a bush taxi winding through the edge of McCaney, Sierra Leone. My phone had no reception. The roads turned from pavement to stone. My clipboard was stamped and signed, but I couldn't recall who gave it to me. St. Isidora Leadership Academy appeared just after a sharp curve, a pristine facility carved into red clay hills, surrounded by manicured hedges and a white perimeter wall topped with gold trim. Elegant, impossibly clean. The kind of place the brochures call an incubator for excellence. A woman in a slate gray suit met me at the front gate. Her name tag read Mira Delane, Deputy Director. Her handshake was light, her eyes unreadable. "We've been expecting you," she said with the kind of smile that didn't quite touch her cheeks. "Follow the protocols. You'll find everything you need in Zone 1. Zone 1! Before I could ask, she was already walking ahead, heels clicking against imported tile. The dorms were labeled in soft pastels: Azure Wing, Primrose Wing, Marigold Wing. Each hallway smelled faintly of lavender and warm plastic. Girls in matching skirts and white tops walked in silent lines, their faces lit with perfect calm. Too calm. I wasn't here to disrupt, just to verify. Funding allocations, roster consistency, exit protocol compliance. Room 12B was the first dorm on my list. I knocked, then entered. 6 bunks, perfectly made, 6 trunks, aligned by the footlockers. But one bed, the top bunk near the window, was empty. No pillow, no trunk, just a folded white uniform and a single photo resting on the mattress. It was old, creased at the edges. A school portrait, a girl no older than 12, staring blankly at the camera. Braided hair, small hoop earrings. She looked like me. Not exactly, but enough to make my chest tighten. The bone structure, the curve of the jaw, the eyes. Too still. I shook it off. Coincidence. A girl from years past who just happened to resemble me. It's not uncommon in audit work to see yourself in the margins. I returned to the hallway and made a note to ask about the missing student. As I stepped into the lounge area, a chime played over the intercom. Soft, metallic. 5 notes. Every girl in the corridor stopped, turned toward the nearest wall, and smiled. Exactly the same way. I blinked. When the chime faded, they resumed walking like nothing happened. "We play tones for mindfulness," Mira said, suddenly appearing beside me. "Keeps them centered." She handed me an updated checklist and walked away. At the bottom of the paper, typed in gray ink, "Reintegration period, 72 hours. Pattern will assert by night 3. I hadn't seen that phrase on any other audit. I looked up. The hallway was empty again. But down at the end, by the door to Azure Wing, the girl from the photo was standing perfectly still. And she wasn't blinking. The next morning, the checklist said to observe a mindfulness session, Zone 2, Room F. I arrived early. The room had no desks, no posters, just a polished stone floor with a spiral etched into the center. 16 girls sat cross-legged along the spiral's curve, all facing outward, all silent. At the front, a young staffer stood beside a mounted speaker and a digital metronome. No name tag, no greeting. She simply pressed a button, and the speaker gave off a soft, chiming tone. 5 notes, exactly like the one from the hallway. Then, in unison, the girls began to speak. "We rise through obedience. We reflect through service. We obey because we remember. We remember because we reflect." Their voices were melodic, neither robotic nor natural. It was like listening to a song without melody. Each phrase landed with metronomic precision. I made a note. Call and response conditioning? One of the girls, row 3, position 5, twitched, just a little. A slight shift in her eye, then she broke from the chant. Her hands gripped the floor. Her head snapped toward me. Please, please, I'm not supposed to be here. I remember my real name. Don't let them send me again. Her voice cracked. The others didn't move. The staffer didn't flinch. The girl crawled toward me, eyes wild. They'll place me again. I don't want to be sent to Paris again. They make me wear her name. Chime. 5 notes. Exactly the same. Her mouth shut mid-sentence. She straightened her back, then smiled. I'm proud to serve. I love my sisters. May I return to my seat? The staffer nodded. The girl returned to her position in the spiral and resumed chanting like nothing had happened. I stared. No one else reacted. Not the other girls. Not the staffer. It was like her breakdown hadn't occurred at all. I stepped into the hallway, shaken. That night, while updating my field notes, I heard footsteps outside my door. A soft tap. No one was there. But slipped under the door was a torn notebook page. Old, with frayed edges. Written in black ink. All caps. They're not gone. They're waiting. She's still here. Room 17. I turned the note over. Drawn faintly in pencil. A stick figure girl. No mouth. Just 2 wide eyes. And behind her, a mirror scribbled with loops. At the bottom, 1 word, underlined 3 times. Reflect. I was sent to audit a girls' school in McKinney. What I found wasn't human. Room 17 didn't exist. Not officially. Not on the printed floor plans Mira gave me. Not on the campus maps displayed near each wing. Not even on the tablet used to log maintenance tickets. But as I walked the eastern hallway the next day, past rooms 14, 15, and 16, there was a stretch of wall that felt wrong. Too wide. Too quiet. The tile didn't match. I opened my checklist, compared the structural notes, then ran my hand along the surface. A seam, a faint one, like the outline of a hidden door. Just then, a girl passed behind me, no older than 12, arms folded behind her back. She slowed slightly and whispered without turning, "They send the brightest. They send them first." Then she was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about her voice kept circling my brain. Something flat, something empty. I returned to that hallway with my flashlight. I knocked gently on the seam. Hollow. The checklist mentioned nothing about this part of the dorm. I filed a request for zone access under the heading, Facilities Irregularity, Unmapped Chamber, Audit Flag. 10 minutes later, a system error flashed on my tablet. Access denied. Compliance level 5. Patterned reintegration. Reintegration. I'd seen that word once before, on the bottom of my printed schedule. I looked back toward the hallway. One of the hallway mirrors glinted at the far end, faintly fogged, though there was no steam or condensation. And in the middle of the fog was a crude spiral traced by a fingertip. My fingertip? The next morning, I asked Mira about the discrepancy. She didn't look up from her clipboard. That part of the building is closed for reinforcement work. What does patterned reintegration mean? She paused. It's not your concern. I stared at her, trying to read her face. For a flicker of a second, just a flicker, I thought I saw her eyes vibrate, like a reflection inside her was trying to look out. Later that day, I reviewed the student roster. Every dorm showed 16 girls per wing, but in 2 separate activity logs, I found entries for 17 toothbrushes dispensed, 17 uniforms laundered, 17 breakfast trays set, 1 too many. That night, I returned to my room to find my mirror taped over with thick brown paper. Sharpie across the top. For your comfort, do not remove. I peeled it off. There was no reflection, just me, standing there, still, but not blinking. I didn't sleep that night, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't trust what would happen if I closed my eyes. At some point before dawn, I sat up and turned the mirror back toward the wall. I didn't want to look at it anymore. I didn't want to see myself. The audit continued. On paper, everything looked perfect. The budget's balanced. The curriculum aligned with international standards. The meal plans were optimized. The girls' GPAs were unusually high, but not implausible. But the more time I spent at St. Isidora's, the less real it all felt. Like I was walking through a carefully arranged simulation. Like the real place was somewhere just beneath this one. That afternoon, I was assigned to inventory the East Wing's linen supplies, just towels and blankets. But halfway through the closet, I found a hardbound journal wedged between the shelves, hidden behind a stack of spare pillowcases. Faded maroon leather, gold lettering worn down to almost nothing. When I opened it, my fingers trembled. The handwriting was mine, not similar, mine. The slant of the R, the looping S, the heavy underline under names. I flipped through the pages, heart pounding. My name is not mine. They placed me in Berlin. I wore a red ribbon. I hated the red ribbon. The mirror speaks louder here. My hands went cold. I don't remember writing this. I don't remember ever being here before last week, but every part of me knew this was mine. In the center of the journal was a page entirely blacked out, except for 3 words, etched so deeply they carved through the paper. The still one. I slammed the book shut. Outside the supply closet, the hallway lights flickered. That night, I dreamed I was back home. But in the dream, all my photos were reversed. My graduation picture, left and right swapped. My apartment door opened the wrong way. Even my scar, the tiny one on my shoulder, was now on the opposite side. I looked in the mirror and didn't see myself. I saw her. Same face, same eyes, same stillness. But her mouth didn't move when I screamed. When I woke, there were muddy footprints inside my room. They led from the mirror to the foot of my bed. The doorknob hadn't turned, and on the pillow beside mine was a single red ribbon, folded. I avoided it for a full day, completed my audit logs, sat in on another class, cultural ambassadorship through language. Every girl spoke flawless German, French, or Mandarin, depending on the day, but none of them ever asked questions. They recited like echoes. On the second night, I returned to the supply closet with a screwdriver and a flashlight. There was a panel behind the shelf, thin, flexible, painted to match the wall. When I pried it loose, cold air rushed out like breath from a hidden lung. Behind the linen wall was a narrow concrete corridor. It sloped downward at a slight angle, the kind you don't notice until your legs ache. Fluorescent lights blinked dimly along the ceiling. The floor had no dust. Someone had used it, recently. At the bottom, a reinforced door with no handle, just a biometric pad and a metal placard, reintegration hold, pattern group A, room 17. I don't remember touching it. I just remember the click. Inside, a chamber lined with velvet walls and one large black mirror set into the floor. It wasn't glass, it absorbed light. A ceiling-mounted projector buzzed overhead, but it wasn't running. In the center of the room sat 17 chairs arranged in a perfect spiral. 16 were empty. The last one was still warm. I stepped forward. The mirror didn't show my reflection, only a deep spiral, turning slowly beneath the surface, like oil and ink sinking into water. And that's when I felt it, the memories. They didn't come back in pieces. They snapped into place, like film sliding into a reel. I was 12. My name wasn't what I go by now. I had been here, in that chair. I'd cried and fought and screamed when they placed the uniform on me and played the first chime. They told me I'd serve a family in Germany. I was to be their adopted brilliance. I was their niece, their shadow. You will speak when told, smile when watched, serve without trace. I remembered the red ribbon. I remembered the mirror in that cold Munich villa, where I first saw my reflection move before I did. I remembered a name they used like a trigger, the still one. I ran from it. I escaped, somehow. I built a life with a new name, a new job. But the pattern doesn't break. It recalls. A whisper broke the silence in the room. It came from behind me. Even if you leave, you always reflect. I turned, but no one was there. Only my reflection in the mirror, rising slowly from the floor like it had been lying beneath it all along. And she smiled. I didn't run. I don't know why. Maybe part of me knew this was the only way I'd ever remember the full truth. On the far wall of room 17, behind a false panel, I found a media locker. 4 shelves, dozens of labeled tapes, old DV formats, even some high 8s, all marked with white stickers and numbers, no names, no dates, but on the top shelf was one that stood out. Prototype. ROD001. The still one. I stared at it for a long time before picking it up. It was cold, like it hadn't been touched in years, or like it had just been returned. In the back corner of the chamber was a monitor, CRT, built into the wall. I slid in the tape, static, then me, younger, smaller, dressed in the same St. Isidora uniform, sitting perfectly still in the center of the spiral room, head tilted slightly to the side, just like the others. A woman's voice spoke off screen, soft and rehearsed. RAUD-001 is prepared for first tone calibration. Reinforcement at 1412. Begin sequence. The tone played. The young me blinked once, then nothing. My mouth hung slightly open. My gaze didn't move. A staffer stepped into the frame and gently turned my head with her gloved fingers. No resistance, no reaction. Confirming subject is stable. Then the staffer whispered something into my ear on screen. Berlin. I smiled. Tears streamed down my cheeks, but my face kept smiling. The screen jumped, glitched, then showed another angle. I was in a different room now, standing beside a white family. I looked a little older. We were posing for a photo. They called me Sophie. I laughed on cue. The woman said, "Say thank you." I said it, and then looked dead into the camera, straight into the lens. "I remember you." The feed cut to black. I stumbled backward. The journal, the mirror, the red ribbon, the chime. It wasn't conditioning, it was repetition. I'd lived this before. The placement, the pattern, the return. The door slammed shut behind me. I ran to it, but there was no handle on the inside. The mirror on the floor began to hum, subtle, like a dial being turned inside my bones. Then the lights dimmed and the projector above flicked on, displaying a silent, looping video across the opposite wall. Girls, row after row of them, standing before new families, Germany, France, Canada, Belgium, South Korea, all smiling the same way, all whispering the same phrase over and over. I am still. I am safe. I serve. I reflect. But in one of the tapes, just one, something flickered. In the far corner of a mirrored bedroom, a little girl stood still while her reflection did not. And that reflection was me. I don't remember how I got out of room 17. One second I was staring at the screen, at myself in that mirrored bedroom, standing still while my reflection moved. The next I was outside, sitting on a bench near the dining hall, hands trembling in my lap. No one around me spoke. The sky was soft and gray, like fabric stretched too tight. Had I been escorted out? Did I scream? The tape, the journal, the mirror, none of it felt like memory. It felt like residue, like whatever they had buried inside me had begun to rise, slow and wet, like rot through plaster. I should have left right then, packed, reported it, filed something with the embassy. But something in me wouldn't let go, something hollow and ringing deep in my chest. I wasn't just auditing a school, I was auditing myself. Later that night, after lights out, I found myself walking the dormitory halls, not searching, following something, a scent, a breath, a vibration in the soles of my feet. Eventually, I reached the far east wing, the one with no label, no windows, just a black door and a spiral carved into the frame. It opened without resistance. Inside was the largest mirror I'd seen yet. Wall to wall, ceiling to floor, unbroken. The room was circular, with a single wooden chair in the middle. No lights, only the silver glow of moonlight diffused through a skylight above. I stepped in. Behind me, the door shut on its own. The room was cold. My breath fogged slightly. I approached the chair. Something about it made my stomach turn. I had sat here before. Not just recently, a long time ago. I looked at the mirror, no reflection. Then, slowly, it faded in. Not me, her, the girl from the photo, from the mirror, from every forgotten fragment. Same face, same scar on the shoulder, same eyes, but without life behind them. She tilted her head, then raised one hand, palm up. I blinked. My hand was raised. I hadn't moved. I tried to lower it. Couldn't. In the mirror, her mouth moved, but the sound came from inside my skull. You got away, but I stayed. That was the deal. I opened my mouth to scream, but no air came out. She stepped forward, one foot, then another, but I didn't move. They put me in you. They buried me, gave you a name, a job, a fake mother, a favorite color. But when the pattern reactivates, I wake up. I collapsed into the chair. My limbs were jelly, my heart sprinting against my ribs. Tears welled up in my eyes, but they didn't fall. You can run, she whispered, but your blood reflects. The mirror pulsed. For a moment, I could see all the girls, every one of them, marching into similar rooms across the world, each with their own family, each one still beneath the surface, waiting to return. And at the center of it all, spinning in endless spiral, was me, a small version of me, still, watching. Then the mirror shattered, not loudly, but like ice breaking over silence. When I looked down, the chair beneath me was gone, and I was standing again, in the middle of an empty room. The door creaked open behind me, and someone whispered, just inches from my ear. I don't know how long I wandered. The school was different now. The halls were darker, the lights slightly dimmer, flickering like candles nearing their end. Staff passed me without speaking, without blinking. The girls walked slower now, heads tilted, eyes glassy. It was as if the performance of normalcy had been paused and the truth had begun to seep through. I entered the admin wing looking for Mira. Someone, anyone to explain this. Her office was open, but she wasn't inside. On her desk sat a locked drawer, half open. Inside, rows of small USB drives, each labeled with a country and a year. Germany, 2006. Belgium, 2011. Ghana, 2013. Mexico, 2015. United States, 2004. That last one made my hands tremble. I plugged it into the terminal. A folder opened. No password. Placement. RAUD001. Photos. Surveillance footage. Interview transcripts with adoptive families. Dozens of files. All of me. Different names. Different clothing. In every photo, my face wore the same look. Composed, pleasant, compliant, and in every video, I never blinked. I watched one clip, maybe 10 seconds long. A dinner table in a California mansion. A white couple laughs politely. I sit between them, around 13. The woman touches my hand and says, "You've brought so much light into our home." I smile, but say nothing. The man asks, "Can you show them the thing? The thing with the poem?" Young me turns, nods, and begins to recite something rhythmic and eerie. I reflect the ones who need me. I forget the one I was. The screen flickers. Then, just before the tape cut to black, young me turned to the camera, glassy-eyed, and whispered, "The still one remembers, even when I don't." I ripped the USB from the console, bile rising in my throat. The room swayed. I staggered into the hallway, dizzy and breathless. And that's when I saw them. Dozens of girls lined up in the courtyard, each one flawless, pressed uniforms, braided hair, serene expressions. They stepped one at a time onto a small wooden platform. A staffer placed a hand on each girl's forehead, whispered something, and the girl smiled, then walked toward a waiting van. No tears, no questions, just peace. I backed away into a side corridor. My legs moved on instinct. I didn't know where I was going until I passed a narrow mirror and froze. I wasn't alone. In the reflection, she stood just behind me. Me, but not. Still. Her mouth moved. Welcome home. It's almost time for your placement. I didn't run this time. I followed the vans, not outside, but through the building, through corridors I'd never noticed, past locked offices, toward a door marked communications that I'd always assumed was for maintenance, but it was open. Inside, the air was colder than anywhere else in the academy. A semicircle of monitors glowed against a wall showing live feeds, classrooms, bedrooms, cities, Seoul, Brussels, Chicago, Lagos. Each screen showed girls, older now, all serving, all blending. I leaned closer to one monitor. A girl poured tea, speaking flawless Italian to a couple smiling like proud benefactors. She bowed gently, performed perfectly. But when she glanced toward the camera, her mouth moved, no sound. Help me. No one noticed. On the wall, a plaque in brass. Compliance through familiarity, reintegration through reflection. She will always be ready beneath it, etched into the control panel. Project, the still one. And suddenly I heard it, the chime, not in the room, in my head. 5 notes, faint and warm, threading into my spine. One last monitor hummed to life, this one darker than the rest. Static gave way to footage. Me, not current me. A version of me, maybe 16, sitting in a chair with her hands folded. A voice from behind the camera, slow and ceremonial. You are the first, the template, the one who returns. They will forget, but you will remember. And when it is time, you'll come home. On screen, I nodded. I'm ready to serve. I collapsed to my knees. All the memories returned, not in pieces, but like floodgates opening. Over and over, I had been placed, recast, recycled, and every time I started to resist, they sent her, the still one. She didn't overwrite you. She waited for you to break, then stepped in. I turned toward the control panel. A red switch gleamed at the edge. Broadcast override. My hand hovered, and that's when I heard the voice. Mine. Don't break the mirror, or we both disappear. She stepped into view, slow and sure. A perfect copy, same scar, same hair, same eyes, but wrong. Too smooth, too quiet, like a portrait painted from memory. Why me, I asked. Why do I keep coming back? She smiled gently. Because you were the one that worked. You smiled on cue. You passed their tests. You didn't fight. Until now. She glided across the room, glancing at the silent monitors. On one screen, the Italian-speaking girl twitched violently. Her reflection in the marble floor stared back, blank and unmoved. If I shut it down, what happens to them? She didn't answer. Instead, a monitor near the far end glowed, showing a shadowed figure in a garden, feeding children. Behind her, rows of mirrors shimmered like water. A voice played, soft as silk. She figured out how to make us last forever. I turned sharply. Who figured it out? The still one tilted her head, almost wistful. Mother. My breath hitched. That word, mother. The chime surged louder. My knees buckled. It was as if someone flipped a switch inside my skull. And then I saw her. Not a myth, not a metaphor. Oprah. Her name triggered the last locked part of my mind, and then fractured it. Images collided. A warm hand on my head. Velvet robes. A whispered command in a villa outside Munich. I had smiled so perfectly. They said I was chosen. And then, like all the others, I was erased. A tone began to rise. Inside me this time. A coded override. I looked to the still one. What happens if I remember everything? Her voice was almost kind. You'll never be able to leave. Not truly. You'll be trapped in the awareness. You'll live in a loop. Memory on top of memory. Truth on top of pain. She stepped closer. Or you can choose to forget. Again. Start over. One last time. The pattern will care for you. You'll be placed. You'll serve. And the still one will keep the rest of you safe. I looked at the red switch one more time. I looked at myself, and I closed my eyes. I woke up in my apartment. The sun filtered through slatted blinds. Coffee brewed on the counter. My laptop chimed, an urgent email waiting. Subject, urgent audit request, All Girls Leadership Academy, Lagos campus. I opened the file. It was stamped, signed, already approved. My name was at the top, but I didn't remember applying. And in the mirror, as I adjusted my collar, I caught a glimpse of something standing behind me, still, smiling. If this story chilled you like it chilled me, check the pinned comment below.